Hello and welcome to my channel where we talk about bikes and more. So this is my second video, and so far we've only been talking about bikes. We haven't been talking about much more than that, but hopefully in the future I'll be able to talk about some other stuff. But today is going to be about bikes, and in particular, how do you go about choosing your first bike, or maybe your next bike? So the first point you need to realize when you're choosing a bike is that changing a bike is not actually a big deal. So I think when you think about it in terms of cars, you don't want to change your car that often, but with motorcycles, it's not actually a big deal. In my first year of riding, I actually changed my bike 3 times. So the first time was like I had my bike for a month, and after the 1 month, I was like, you know what, I don't think riding's for me, and I just guess I sold my bike. I quit. I said riding's not for me, and I quit riding. And then I went and bought, after that, a short time after that, I just went and bought another one because it just kept nagging at me, to keep riding. Even before I actually before I started riding, it was just something, that kept nagging at me to want to start to ride in the first place. So that is sort of typical. And then I had 3 bikes in the first year, and then I've been riding for another 6 or 7 years after that, and I've had maybe a different bike every year after that. And the reasons why I sold was, one of them was to change from a loaner bike, like a restricted bike, into like a high powered after getting my full license. And other reasons were, times maybe I just needed money at that time. Over the years, maybe I've also taken a bit of a break. In the summer, I find with all the gear I wear, it's maybe a bit hot, so I sort of avoid riding in summer. Although I have been riding in summer more lately. Yeah, and so it's not actually a big deal to change bikes. Like I said, the first 3 bikes that I bought and sold, I actually made money on them. So I think all up I made around $1,200 across those 3 bikes, and I got to ride them around, and I've sort of either broken even or made money on a lot of the bikes I've had. There's one particular bike where I lost a fair bit of money. I lost like $1,400 and a helmet. So the guy, when he came, he also wanted the helmet. Look, I just gave it to him, so I just let that one go. Yeah, and it's pretty common for a lot of riders just to change their bikes often. So it's really not a big deal to change bikes. So don't get too fixated, about choosing the right bike, as long as it's in the ballpark, which I'll talk about in my next few points. Second thing to look out for when you're choosing your first bike or your next bike is don't become like what they call out there in the internet world a spec sheet warrior. So you don't need to look at the, fine details of, power specs and torque spec and performance. You don't need to look at that. Actually, experienced riders don't pay much attention to spec sheets at all, and they can actually, they experienced riders see someone who is fixated on spec sheets, someone who maybe looks at, one bike has got 3 kilowatts more than another bike. They actually see that as a very newbie thing. They can tell a newbie rider by someone who talks about spec sheets and talks about how much power a bike has and what its 0 to 100 kilometers per time is. It's experienced riders know that that's a very newbie type of thing to do, and there's reasons for that. One of the reasons is that you can't actually, for a lot of these bikes out there, the full power bikes, not many riders can actually get the full power to ground. Like, if you look at a typical sport bike, 600cc class, you're looking at maybe 90 to 100 kilowatts, and you cannot put that power down on the street. Like, I've been riding for many years, and I'd be, I don't know if I could put, maybe the maximum I could actually put down is about 60 kilowatt. And that wouldn't even be, at any time that I wanted. Everything, the conditions and everything would need to be right. So a lot of riders know that. They know that even if you had anything more than, if you had 90 or 100 or 120 kilowatts, you can very, very rarely, unless you were on the track, on the racetrack, you could, but out on the street, you cannot. It's very, very rare where you can actually put that power down. And if you look at 0 to 100 kilometer an hour time, some sport bikes, for example, fast bikes can go from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3 seconds. It's not many riders can actually do that. Not many riders can get that performance out of it. Your typical rider would probably get about 4 seconds. A good rider who's had a lot of practice maybe can squeeze it closer down to that, maybe 3.5 or even 3 if you're really good, or be practicing a lot out on like a drag strip or something. But it's not as easy where you just put like a car where you just put your foot on the pedal and you can get the performance spec that's been specified. The second reason is that motorbike engines, the characteristics and the power band is very different to a car. So, like I said, car engines are pretty much all kind of the same in terms of characteristic. But with motorbikes, you can have one bike that only revs up to. You can have a bike that maybe typically revs up to 12,000 RPM. You have another bike that revs up to 16, 17,000 RPM. You've got another bike that maybe can only rev up to 10,000 RPM. So that power band distribution is very, very different across those three bikes that I'm saying. Unlike a car where pretty much all cars can rev out to about 6 or 7. So there's that direct relationship between power and performance. So that's just not the case. And so experienced riders know this as well. And that's why they don't really focus on specs. So don't be a spec sheet warrior. So what do you look for when you choose a bike? Well, you look for how it looks, or how it feels, or how heavy it is, its weight. you look for your weight. How heavy are you as the rider? Because bikes are very sort of sensitive to that sort of thing. And while I'm talking about weight, for me, because I weigh about 90 kilos, the smallest bike that I'd probably get would be the R3 that I had, which was about a 300, just over 300 cc's. That'll probably be the smallest for my weight. I think that bike was just a bit too small. I think it was okay just to get started and learn. I did a lot of learning on that bike, and I passed my test from using that bike, my license test. I've bought bikes based on how they look. I think certain bikes that look good. I buy them because they look nice, and I like having them sitting in my garage. I also like riding sport bikes, and even though I don't really speed, I'm not the type of person who likes to speed, which is really what sport bikes are made for. They're made for speeding, but I don't really like that. I don't speed. I like sport bikes for other reasons, the other characteristics they have. The ergonomics. A lot of people complain about the ergonomics of sport bikes. They say that they're tiresome, and you get strained, your back gets strained. But I actually like that. I like being tired after a ride. I like not being comfortable. If I wanted to be comfortable, I'd just drive a car. So, I like that aspect of it. I also like sport bikes are known for their power, but I don't use the power. I actually like the low revving or the mid-range of a sport bike. I like the imbalanced sound of the engine when you're slowing down or feathering the clutch. I don't actually like the high power, higher revving side of sport bikes. I think it sounds pretty whiny. So I don't ride sport bikes for the power. I like the low speed characteristics of them. So the other thing to look out for when you're buying, especially if you're a new rider, is don't buy a lemon. So buy the newest bike that you can afford, because you don't want the issues of an old bike. The problems or breaking down or something. Maybe it's been played around with by a previous owner. You just sort of want to get the newest, cleanest bike that you can afford. Oh, and it goes without saying, get something within your skill limit. So don't get something that's way overpowered, because it only takes a little twist of the throttle to have a massive power output on your back wheel. You don't want that when you're just starting out to ride. And there's actually a lot of countries where you can't even do that because of the power restrictions they have for new riders. And in terms of financing, I know a lot of people maybe are against it, but I don't actually mind. I've never financed any of my bikes, but I don't have anything against it. If you can afford it, if you can afford it, then why not? You can get your dream bike. Maybe not finance your first bike, so just see how you go. Yeah, so with your first bike, maybe just see how you go, get some experience, get some good practice, and then maybe later on, if you want to finance and get your dream bike, yeah, why not? If you can afford it, why not? So yeah, that's what you look for when you're buying your first bike or your new bike. So yeah, that's I guess all I've got. Ride safe.